So my name is James Natoli. Happy to have you with us tonight. One of the people who's been corresponding with Paige and some other folks at the CTA about tonight's event. So putting together an event about congestion pricing. Hopefully this one is a little wonkier. We can all get in the weeds. You can ask all your really weird questions that you've always wanted to. In my capacity, though, I'm more here today with Grow the Richmond. So Grow the Richmond, those of us out here in the lovely Richmond district, where we can finally see some blue sky for the first time today, care about better housing, transportation, and small business out here. So I'm going to try and keep my thinking cap on to ask a few questions from the perspective of what congestion pricing looks like and how you maybe sell that to someone who feels like they're a little bit more car dependent in a neighborhood further out from downtown or might be driving in. So that's my perspective that I'm wearing today. And I'll kick things over to Cliff for the rest.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks to Paige and Priyati for presenting tonight. I think I'll just go to you, Paige, if you're ready.
Sure, and my name is Paige. I work on the TA communications team, and I'll just send it over to Priyati, who will be presenting today. She's our senior planner at the TA and working on the congestion pricing study.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here today. I'm just going to share my screen and we can jump ahead on of this presentation. And then we can go through any questions that you may have about this study. Looking forward to this conversation tonight. So as Paige said, I'm Priyati Ahmed. I'm a senior planner with the TA, and today I will provide an update about this study. So as we all know that we are in the middle of a global pandemic. Hopefully we're at the tail end, but we are still living in it. And what we noticed that beginning of this pandemic, congestion has mostly vanished. And since then, congestion has somewhat returning to our city streets, but we don't know what a post-pandemic future would look like. But we do know from previous recessions that San Francisco's economy has proven resilient in the past. So we are anticipating that congestion will return. And the work we do today can help us prepare for the future so we don't see the same level of congestion that we saw in 2019. So right now, it's an important time to think about what kind of future we want to create after this pandemic. In this image that I'm showing on my screen has, let me make this bigger. You can see that the image, it's an image of San Francisco, and it's showing the traffic level around the major arterials in the city. And as you can see, most of the congestion, which are showing in red and orange, are focused in or really concentrated in northeastern quadrant of the city. And this is where a lot of the business centers, lot of the tourist attractions are situated, as well as it is also our core of our transit system. So we know that congestion in this area affects everyone. Too many cars on the road delay people who are trying to get home, to work, to their medical appointments. It pollutes the air, and all these trips increases the frequency of vehicle-related crashes. And we also know that more cars on the road disproportionately affect low-income communities and communities of color, because these communities are more likely to ride on the bus, which is stuck in traffic, live in areas with higher rates of traffic collision, have health impacts such as asthma from polluted air, and spend a disproportionate amount of income on transportation, especially those who drive. The map I'm showing here shows two sets of information. One is the purple area show where San Francisco's low-income communities and communities of color are concentrated. So as you can see that it is in the downtown area as well as the south part of the city. And then the orange shows where are San Francisco's, where our most occurring severe and fatal collision happens on San Francisco street. So that's the orange grid. And you can see that downtown has concentrated level of both of these components. It has low-income communities and communities of color, as well as arterials and roadways that have higher severe injuries and fatalities. So as we think about how to create a better transportation post-pandemic, let's keep in mind strategies that get people shift from cars to more space-efficient and sustainable ways of getting around. That's where the incentives come in. We're exploring how an idea called congestion pricing, or charging a fee to drive downtown during weekday rush hours, could help keep traffic moving. Implementing congestion pricing when traffic return would reduce the number of cars driving downtown at peak time is one of the most effective tools we can use to reduce congestion. This idea has been implemented around the world, including London and Stockholm, and New York was the first American city to approve a congestion pricing program. But no American city actually has implemented this program yet. For these reasons and more, as congestion worsened, our board, the Board of Supervisors, asked our agency to explore how such a congestion pricing policy would work for San Francisco, and that was in 2019, pre-pandemic. So when our board asked us to do this exploratory study, we first started looking at some data of who was traveling into northeastern San Francisco when congestion was at its peak. We found that 75% of travelers in Northeast are trips that are coming from within the city and rest from the region. So we found that the 75% of travelers are happening to and from the congestion pricing area zone or within this zone. And the rest 25% were coming from either North Bay, East Bay, and South Bay. Then we looked at data of who travels downtown in morning rush hour by income. And this graph is summarizing that finding. So as you can see, the bottom bar is the high income travelers that represents the largest share of people driving downtown, and people in low income groups that are representing the first two rows are shown that these groups are more likely to take transit, walk, or bike. In fact, of all downtown trips during morning peak, only 13% are low-income drivers, and these are the people we would be concerned about. Concerned about protecting from an equity perspective. So when congestion was at its worst, we saw a lot of congestion downtown, buses stuck in traffic, and cars blocking crosswalk. In the future, the idea is that with congestion pricing, some people could pay a fee to drive downtown during weekday rush hours, while others could drive at a different time or travel by a different mode. Everyone, whether driving or on transit, has a smoother ride. Certain groups, like traveler with low incomes or disability, could receive an exemption or discount. Fees from the program could be reinvested in things like safer street and better transit. To achieve the benefit that the other cities have seen from congestion pricing, we estimate that we would need to reduce rush hour car trips downtown by 15%. That's our target. And if we reach our 15% target, we expect that would be enough to meet the 4 key goals of this program. The first is get traffic moving. Here we are really talking about reducing the traffic delay and speeding up buses while maintaining the same number of people going downtown. Increase safety for people walking, biking, and driving. This would reduce crashes and injuries in downtown. Clean the air to support public health and fight climate change, reduce greenhouse gas emissions and unhealthy air pollutants. Advance equity, we're protecting low-income folks from cost increases with discounts and exemptions, and prioritizing program improvements for low-income communities and communities of color. The study team right now is doing analysis of understanding which boundary options would meet our study goals. The congestion pricing zone that is under consideration is in northeastern San Francisco, including downtown and SoMa neighborhoods. The map shows this proposed boundary. This designed to include the most congested areas and freeway ramps while avoiding splitting neighborhoods wherever possible. Based on feedback we have heard so far, we developed 3 scenarios for further analysis and consideration. 2 of these are focused primarily on maximizing means-based exemptions, discounts, transit subsidies, and other mean-based fees with residents and bridge toll payer discount. So the first, so kind of break down the different scenarios we are studying. The first one is the configuration, the configuration is inbound only. So in these 2 scenarios, drivers would only pay to go into the zone, where scenario 3, a driver would pay to go in the zone and then as the exit. That would be bidirectional. And we have a variety of discounts and exemptions across different scenarios. So I will walk through that. So first is we are proposing a full exemption for very low income travelers across all 3 scenarios. For low income travelers, we are proposing a 2/3 discount under scenario 1 and scenario 3, and a 1/3 discount for moderate travelers under scenario 1 and scenario 3, and no discounts for middle and high income travelers. Then we have, so that was the income-based discount, and then we have other user group discounts. So we are proposing a 50% discount across all 3 scenarios, a bridge toll pair and a zone resident discount under scenario 2, which in bridge toll pair, a bridge toll pair would receive a $1.75 credit, and a zone resident will receive a 50% discount under scenario 2. There are 2 round trips across all scenario, meaning a traveler could go in and out 4 times, and that would be the maximum they would pay. TNCs also have a different charge configuration. So we thought about this in such a way where a commuter usually goes to their work, they park, they do their work, and then leave around 5 or 6. But a TNC driver, just the way their travel works is they will pick up a passenger, drop them off, drive to pick up another passenger and drop them off, so on and so forth. So we knew that their travel behavior is inherently different from a commuter's perspective. So what we proposed that TNCs would be charged every trip they make. So not just to go in the zone, but any trip they make within the zone, they'll be charged. And then we have transit subsidies under scenario 1 and 3, which is basically a 50% transit fare discount for very low income travelers. So this is our whole menu of discounts and exemptions for different user groups. So this is what we kind of are analyzing right now, but a lot of our work right now is focusing on understanding what a post-COVID world would look like, because we've been in this for a year. We have some data to kind of understand what are the relationship of different indicators. And there are 3 ways we are trying to, there are 3 inputs we are trying to make assumptions about to understand what a post-COVID 2025 may look like. So the first one is population and job growth. So based on the last two recession, which is just 2000 recession and then 2008 recession, we have an understanding of how that recovery and population and job growth went. So we are applying those. Applying those understanding and findings to estimate what a population and job growth might be after as we are recovering from this pandemic. Second is a transit service assumption. From shelter in place till now, a lot has happened in terms of what transit services were offered along this whole around this whole 1 year. So we are working and coordinating with SFMTA to understand what 2025 transit level may look like. What are the projects such as Van Ness BRT, Caltrain electrification as scheduled to be completed that we should assume. And the last one is travel behavior. And this is really coming out of it's very COVID-19 specific, where we are seeing, a lot of the labor is doing telecommuting like me. What is the likelihood of that continuing, since so many of the companies are finding that to be efficient and feasible for their industry? Third is transit avoidance, and second is transit avoidance, and third is activity participation. And these are really to avoid a large number of crowd and maintaining social distances. So for those two, we are assuming that by 2025, as we reach herd immunity, that component would not be there, and we would be at a pre-pandemic level where we are meeting up with friends and family, having dinners indoors, and going to concerts and whatnot. So along with this assumption, this will be the new baseline for this study. And the 3 recommended scenarios will be modeled against this baseline. So this would be kind of the no pricing scenario of what a 2025 world will look like. And then we are modeling what happens when we do have these pricing and different discount structure to this new baseline. And we are also assuming some of the investment categories. So the first and the only one we are really assuming is the minimum transit service. This is to really address that when people are going to shift modes because they don't want to pay, there need to be additional transit services to accommodate that. So we are assuming a 20 to 25% transit increase. From last year outreach, we heard that other investment priorities include more transit services, more capacity, better accessibility of transit, as well as pedestrian and bicycle safety measures. The other investments that are still under consideration are street repaving, transit ambassadors, improved paratransit, and added school buses. So to give you a little bit of overview of our study, currently we started this study in 2019. Since then, we have done outreach, done some initial outreach, developed kind of the scope and the goal of our study. Last May in 2019, we defined kind of the early findings of what a congestion pricing may look like. And here we are analyzing a 3 very specific scenario against a COVID baseline to see what the reduction, how this will meet our study goals. Our plan is to do a robust outreach in next 2-3 months, and then based on the feedback and based on our technical findings, to bring a final recommendation to our board in September-October timeframe. Just to give you what may be a road ahead if our board says, great, move forward with this idea, is that that we would first need to get a state legislation to charge, to have a congestion pricing fee. Currently, no public roads can have a fee associated with it, so that would need to be first implemented. Then we would need to kind of detail policy and a system design. This will look at, the nuts and bolts of the policy of, how to give different exemptions, how to give discounts, what does it mean in terms of the congestion pricing design, what type of equipments we would need. So all that questions will come, and throughout the entire process, we will be doing a ton of public outreach to make sure that this program is, is getting designed to serve San Francisco. So that is kind of the end of our presentation. Here is our project email, congestion-pricing at sfcta.org. I'm here to take any questions and answer any question, but if something comes up later on, feel free to email us. So with that, I can be open for questions.
Thanks. So I'm going to read people's questions, and just a reminder to everyone to please drop your questions in the chat. And if you do want them to be anonymous, since this is being recorded, please note that as well. So I think the first question we had was from Vignesh. Vignesh had a question about the discounts. Are they stacked, for instance, income level and being a resident, or would you get a discount for just one of those categories?
So I believe, so that's a good question. I believe the discounts would be the higher one. If you are, let's say, a very low income resident, you'll get a full exemption. If you are under, let me just pull up the scenarios. If you are under scenario 1 and, so if you're under scenario 2 as a low income resident, you'll get a 50% discount.
Great. So we have a few questions from HS about the rationale for means testing and about like different alternatives to try to relate the charges to pollution levels. For instance, whether it should be different for carpooling or hybrid electric or hydrogen vehicles.
Yeah, so the first one is the mean-based one, and the structure we have come up with kind of here. So we have understood from a very initial kind of a listening session with various groups in the industry in San Francisco that in order for such a program to exist, we need to provide, we need to make sure this is not harming folks that are already been either priced out or either, driving is just the most rational way for them to go downtown, and they have no way to kind of pay for it. So that this inherent inequity that, our system that exists, and not just for, drivers, it also exists for transit riders as well. But we're looking at this as a congestion pricing. This is the scope of this. So we kind of really wanted to make sure that the intention that we have in terms of reducing congestion, better air, better, safer street, like this doesn't have an unintended cause for people that have to not be able to apply for a job because there's no way they can take on this a daily toll, or have to go to a different school because they can't come to the zone. So that was kind of our initial thinking, that since we are operating in such an inequitable baseline, we didn't want this program to kind of really make it more inequitable. Second one, I guess the question you were referring to, why not have discounts for carpooling or for other type of vehicle? So for carpooling, we, there isn't that much reduction. We do see solo cars, and it's kind of like every car does have a congestion component. And if you are carpooling, you are going to be splitting the fee in a couple of ways anyway. So we didn't kind of, see a strong rationale for that. And in terms of the electric vehicle, yes, it has obviously a clear benefit in terms of climate, but this still is adding one more car to the road, meaning it's adding traffic delays, it's adding the safety concerns. You know, a lot of and safety concerns come with, you know, when traffic congestion happens, people make erratic behaviors, and it's nothing to do with, you know, what type of driver you are. You just want to get the green, and you just want to go, and those decision happens during a congested area, as well as speeding. So it has nothing to do with what type of car you have when you want to kind of better those aspects. So that's why we felt that those categories didn't have a discount or exemptions.
Great, and you may want to stop sharing your screen if we're not going to be talking about that slide, just so everyone can see better. So John Bate asks, the Lifeline Muni Pass for low-income riders has some issues with a difficult application process, and this has led to calls to make Muni free. How would you ensure that the sign-up process for equity discounts would be easier than it currently is?
Yeah, that's something we heard quite a bit about, you know, throughout our outreach and throughout what we're doing. And currently, we're at a very initial phase where we are really understanding if this program is feasible at all for San Francisco, and if we will get the benefits that we are hoping to get from this program. So we are kind of analyzing and bringing those back. What we've been thinking about is that any discounts and exemptions we offer, we want to tie that eligibility with existing programs. So we want to make sure we are taking advantage of you know, government-based programs that are already been running, such as CalFresh, or I mean, Muni Lifeline was one of the programs we were going to look to and understand from how to, you know, tie it. But if that program is, you know, has its issue, perhaps, you know, perhaps it's asked us to kind of be more proactive, thinking about what that streamlined process would look like. But the idea really is that if one traveler kind of qualifies for an existing subsidized program, that this could automatically be applied to them, so they don't have to go through a long requirement process or sign up or whatnot. So currently that's our thinking, but that is going to be evolved as we get more and more detailed of this program.
Great. So we have a question from Jane Natoli. In terms of where traffic is coming from within SF, is there a breakdown of that regarding where people are coming from within the city?
I don't have that breakdown right here with me. That's something Paige and I can follow up with to see if we can provide at which districts traffic are coming from. When I looked at this data, I don't think any district kind of stood out to me. It was just surprising that so much of the traffic is just coming from within the city. So yeah, I can definitely follow up to make sure I have a breakdown for that.
And Joanna Gubman was asking, how soon can this be implemented? And do you have any strategies to roll this out ASAP? Are there any interim measures that would be more a quick build, such as super blocks or slow streets?
We are currently working on understanding how does this program will mean a post-COVID time. You know, there are economic we are in an economic downturn. So what does it mean for businesses and for folks that are just don't want to get on transit right now, and driving is kind of the only way. So our thinking is it's going to be 25 or later, just because we want San Francisco to kind of come out of this pandemic before we start thinking about this program. But that is based on, you know, various assumptions we made. I mean, I don't think anybody knows what will happen in the next couple of years. So we are going to be monitoring how is the congestion looking, how is the speed happening in downtown, and we are developing those implementation threshold to give us that answer of when this program makes sense. And in terms of other strategies like super block or slow street, we can talk to SFMTA. I know they've been working on trying to permanent slow street in a couple of the streets in SF, of how this can relate. But this is really targeting drivers to not drive in morning and evening peak hour, where the other ones are, is really focusing on increasing safety through exclusive right-of-way for pedestrian and bicyclists. So we can definitely, make sure that we are engaging with SFMTA as this program kind of takes its course.
Okay, then there's quite a few questions that I'll lump together about kind of how you would verify people's income, and like, would that apply to visitors or travelers? Someone noted abuse of the disabled placard program. So how would you avoid fraud? And like, if there's multiple people in the car at the same time, like, how would that, like, which person's income would be considered?
Yeah, these are great. So I think that in terms of, there have to be a lot of lessons learning from my agency of how to roll out discount and exemption program. And that is, that will happen in next couple of years as we see kind of the fate of this program. In other programs that I've learned about, that they do collect, tax information to determine whether you, tax information, salary, they have a couple of different categories to determine whether you qualify for, different socialized programs. So I can see us kind of understanding from those programs what type of information to pull from. We're really thinking of kind of having the same requirements as other programs, so we can tie it to say, one participant is eligible for various benefits. In terms of fraud and people cheating the system, we will try our best to do it. I know that this happens. And if there are multiple people in the car and, one is, I think it will really come down to who the driver is, the person who's like registered, or a person who is the main driver of the car would determine whether there will be any exemptions or not. And in terms of visitors, we are not sure yet if this discounts will be applied to an outside visitor that is not from the Bay Area, because that would require another set of eligibility and requirement to understand, to kind of tie it to. Perhaps we could do it. I mean, there's fast track, there's ways to, tie it to different accounts now. But this is really looking at San Francisco and Bay Area residents and workers, and the usual, the regional travelers that comes to downtown.
So I'm going to go to a question from Simon Tan, who hasn't asked a question yet. How did you model the rise of telecommuting, and does travel demand still increase in the baseline with all the companies instituting remote work policies?
Yeah, so what we did was we looked into what happened in shelter, when shelter in place went in, which happened like 80 to 90% work from home, and what we can, and based on that information, where what was pre-pandemic. So those are the kind of 2 points that we landed in the middle to say by 2025, certain industry obviously has seen, no specific change into their work product or efficiency. So they probably will continue to have some component of work from home, maybe not 5 times, but 2 to 3 days. So we assumed about 27% of SF workforce will work from home in 2025. This is an assumption. This is kind of taken into of what's going on currently with all, a lot of the tech companies saying you could work virtually full time. So we will monitor how does this evolve over the next couple of years. And the baseline assumption, the baseline travel assumption is much lower. And we don't have that information here in the packet, but it is lower than what was in 2019. So what was in 2019, it is lower as of 2025. And it is because of a couple of the assumptions I said, but main one that has an effect is work from home. So if that component changes, we will see a lot more traffic in 2025.
So then John Bate was asking a question about trying to understand the difference between the 3 scenarios. And actually, I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but I'll read it and then John, chime in if I'm missing something. But the idea that it's kind of trading off the low income discount in favor of a toll players discount. And so like, how would that ever be justified from an equity perspective?
Is the question, sorry, I don't think I understood it either.
Yeah, just to clarify, if you look at scenario 2 compared to scenarios 1 and 3, the main difference is that the low income discount has been reduced, and that seems to have gone towards a toll payers discount. So how is that really justifiable from an equity perspective?
Yeah. So no, I understand that. So you're talking about scenario 2. So what we wanted to do with this scenario, it's understand with the minimum equity, with meeting our minimum equity goal, which one would, what the travel demand would be with each of these. So none of these are like, we are recommending at this point. We are kind of understanding the trade-offs between them and the bridge. So scenario 2 is really trying to say that, okay, for very low income, we're giving full exemption, but we still want to reduce this 15% traffic. So with that constraint, what other discounts we want to have? And we wanted to see what is the impact of giving bridge toll payer discount and what is the impact of giving resident discount, because those are the two, those are the things we heard in our outreach, and we wanted to kind of understand what is the trade-off with a 2/3 discount under scenario 1 and 3 and a moderate discount under 1 and 3. So that was kind of our take on that. What would be, so yeah, with the constraint of 15% traffic reduction and having the very low income being exempted, what other ways, what are the trade-offs of having a toll discount and having a resident discount? But whether they're meeting our equity goals or not, the results will tell us, when we actually run this model.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Vignesh asked a clarifying question about there was some discussion of what the peak hours are that are being modeled.
Yeah, so these are modeled hours. So when we refine policies, they might be a little bit different, but what we are modeling is 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. morning peak, and 3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. is evening peak.
Awesome, thank you.
And I guess Joanna was asking a follow-up if there was any consideration of the relationship to our climate goals, and given that the city has a climate action plan and 2025 is kind of well into that period, and also that congestion is already returning to pre-COVID levels. Vaccination is well underway. It will not take until 2025. So just trying to understand the 2025 timeframe.
Yeah. So 2025 is based on some of the really big assumptions we made. And in terms of population and job, we were really conservative estimating what that growth will be from now on. So perhaps with vaccine rollout and getting a herd immunity faster, we will see the return of congestion. I mean, we don't know. So we were kind of being on the conservative side to kind of say like, okay, if many things go wrong and we take it's a slower pace recovery with more telecommuting, with not as much as transit service that we had in pre-pandemic, what is the reasonable time frame we would need this program, and it is happening to be 2025 or later. But if we see congestion being built in, and this is something we are going to be actively monitoring over the next couple of years to understand, yes, we are reaching kind of a level that is not headed the right way. Let's start thinking about implementing this program. One other way we are also thinking about that, perhaps we can implement this program a little earlier, but with a lower fee. And lower fee is really gets to this idea that we are not really seeing congestion as of 2019, but there is congestion that are building up. So a lower fee could have some incentives for folks to switch modes or travel at a different time to kind of still keep that congestion level as, kind of have that steady congestion level. We are understanding what are the trade-offs with the lower fee and what that implementation time will look like. So yeah, 2025 is a big assumption in this uncertain time. So we are going to be actively working on refining this assumption.
Cole Rose asked a question. Congestion pricing is unpopular, which makes sense since aversion to paying the fee is how the program works. I know there's been a ton of behind the scenes work with local equity organizations, but how will this idea be presented to regular people, especially those in communities of concern, so that this idea might get enough political support? And I'll take liberty of adding in another question, which may or may not be relevant. HS was asking for what purposes will the money collected be used?
Yeah, I can take a shot at first one, but our communication lead, Paige, is here to help us guide that through. I think as I'm working on this project, I can say that we've been very transparent. We have a policy advisory committee. We have a technical advisory committee. We are trying to engage with different community leaders and different community groups, especially those represent minorities, minority stakeholders, and communities of concern. And whether we like the idea or not, whether we like this fee or not, we are trying to be very transparent about this process. So when we get to the end, we can have a very fair evaluation of this, of our findings. And in terms of investment, investment will be tied to how much revenue this program is bringing. But our high level thoughts of investments are that it should go into transit, improving transit that people will take because they don't want to pay, as well as other safety projects, bike and ped safety that can include opening crosswalk where there is no crosswalk, curb bulb out, signal timing changes, streetscape, but new bike lane, so all those amenities that makes bicycle and pedestrian safer. And then we have ideas of adding things such as street repaving and added school buses. Paige, did you want to add anything on the communication side?
Sure, yeah. So as Priyoti mentioned, we have this policy advisory committee, which has strong representation from communities of concern, low-income communities of color. And we've been working with them from the beginning to really set the study up to have an equitable process and with the goal of having equitable outcomes. So they gave us feedback on our outreach plan. They gave us feedback on the different touch points that we'd have with them and our goals and objectives. So we set it all up with their feedback and collaboration. And we've really used, it's kind of like this focus group that we have throughout the entire study. They're with us and they've given us a lot of great feedback, in particular, how to deal with COVID and like, should we continue doing outreach during this time? And they did give us the go ahead and encouragement to do that. And so a big part of our outreach strategy isn't, on public Zoom all the time. It's actually what we call co-creation workshops. And we've been working really closely with community-based organizations. We first started by hosting these in-person workshops in partnership with community organizations like Central City SRO and Young Community Developers in the Bayview. And then we did transition those to be virtual. And they're 2 hours long. And they are on Zoom, and we work really closely with the community organization to set them up in a way that will really resonate with their community. And half of them have been in language. And so we've been really taking the feedback that we're getting from these community members to heart. And we will include that in our outreach report. And we actually have an outreach synthesis from our first round of outreach, because we have completed one round and we'll be doing another one starting around June. So I can share that in the chat if you kind of want to peruse it and see some of the findings that we've been having from co-creation.
Great. Well, looks like that's just about all the questions, and it's getting towards the hour. So I was wondering if the presenters have any final kind of closing thoughts that you would add after the questions, and then we can pass it to Cliff to close.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having us. It's been a really good discussion about this program, and what's to come ahead is, as we are finishing up our modeling and synthesizing the data, we are planning to kind of present all that information in May to June timeframe. So stay tuned if you are interested about learning how is this all evolving and what are the different scenarios say about travel behavior, equity goals. Yeah, and let Paige or me know if you're interested in another one of these meeting and Zoom session. And we would love to host it.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the great presentation and question and answer session, Priyoti, and thanks for being here and answering some questions, Paige. And thanks everyone here for tuning in and asking great questions. I think my only final thoughts are to join us on Wednesday for our SFEMB monthly meeting. I think we've got Councilmember Karaswani from Berkeley to talk about their fourplex initiative. I think Sharkey from the Small Business Commission is going to talk about shared spaces. And I think we're expecting Megan Mitchell to talk about the state of JFK Drive and Golden Gate Park. I forget if I missed anybody there, but that should be a fun meeting, and we'll send out updates of more interesting ones like this one. Do you have anything to add, Jane?
Just because I would be remiss to say, we're also expecting Raphael Mandelman on Wednesday. Can't forget a D8 supervisor. But yeah, check out, that's our next event, I think, in the EMB space. So check it out if you haven't done anything. And just feel to that page. Thank you for your time. Really enjoyed hearing this and hearing everybody's questions. So thank you.